Good morning. Welcome to the Point. Well, this has been a remarkable week, politically speaking. For the third time in our nation's history, a sitting president has been impeached. And at the very moment that was happening, President Donald Trump was at the Kellogg Arena in Battle Creek railing against the process, singling out House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff and praising Republicans as he kept track of the vote in real time.
But think of this, $45 million they spent. And I heard somebody say, well, we got back some of that money. Let me tell you, you cost this country billions and billions and billions of dollars in all of the things that didn't get done, in all of the embarrassment to our country. You cost billions and billions of dollars, and it was a hoax. But this guy Schiff, I have absolute proof. I have this, I have that, this, that. Anytime he sees a camera, and he's stone-faced, right? Stone-faced. He's a pathological liar. He gets up, and I've never seen anything like it. Even I was saying, I wonder what he has. What does he have? He says, I have absolute. I said, I haven't spoken to Russia in years. What the hell do I have to do with Russia? But this guy gets up. Oh, I think we have a vote coming in. So we got every single Republican voted for us. Whoa. Wow, almost 200. So we had 198, 229, 198. We didn't lose one Republican vote, and 3 Democrats voted for us, Haley.
Before he took the stage, Vice President Mike Pence talked with me about impeachment, but also weighed in on a couple of policy issues that impact us right here in Michigan. Mr. Vice President, we've had the opportunity to talk quite a bit over the past 3.5 years, but this is unique. You were here 2 weeks ago and made it clear you wanted this impeachment process to stop. It didn't, of course, and as we stand here, articles of impeachment are being debated, and when you and the president go on stage, they will either be voting on them or already voted. What impact does this have on you, your administration, and Congress to get things like a spending bill or a defense authorization done going forward? And what impact does this have, do you think, on the country?
Well, I think what's happening in Washington, D.C. tonight is a disgrace. And it's a disservice to our history and to the serious and momentous process of impeachment. But I really do believe at the end of the day, this is going to leave a mark. Not on President Donald Trump, it's going to leave a mark on Democrats in the Congress. I mean, as I traveled all across Michigan today, I saw people galvanized in their support for this president, a president who's kept his promise to rebuild our military, revive the economy. We see manufacturing roaring back. We have a new USMCA trade deal that's going to strongly support the automotive sector, so important all across Michigan. And now more than 170 conservative judges to our courts at every level. People appreciate the leadership that President Trump has provided and the results that he's brought to this country. And my sense today, traveling across Michigan, is they don't appreciate the endless investigations and a partisan impeachment brought to the floor of the Congress today. It's remarkable that the only bipartisan vote today in Congress will be a bipartisan vote against the impeachment of the president. And that's all you need to know to understand that what's happening here in Washington, D.C. is at odds with our history. It's at odds with our tradition. But we're going to press on from here. The Senate Republicans will have their say in January, and voters here in Michigan and around America are going to have their say next November.
I want to move on to 2 other very important issues. Do you think that, however, that this process has people on both sides more disgusted with the government?
Well, what I can tell you is that the results that President Trump has delivered for the people of Michigan and people all across this country, I think has restored their confidence in his leadership, in the Republican Party's ideals and leadership. But I think it's also galvanized a determination to make sure that after the 2020 election, not only do we have 4 more years of President Donald Trump in the White House, and elect John James to the United States Senate in a Republican majority. But I think the American people also recognize that we need to elect a Republican majority in the House of Representatives so we can do in the next 4 years what we were able to do in the first 2 years of this administration, to revive our economy, rebuild our military, and see our courts filled with principled conservatives at every level.
NAFTA had some real impact in the state of Michigan, and the new USMCA that is now moving is promised to be better. Can you tell me what you think, how it will be better than NAFTA for a state like Michigan and, as you pointed out, the automobile industry?
Well, Michigan, my home state of Indiana, we literally saw entire communities hollowed out after NAFTA, because NAFTA, whether intentionally or unintentionally, created an incentive for companies to move jobs south of the border to Mexico. And by creating a requirement that a certain percentage of automobiles are constructed in North America and that they're constructed at a wage that is the average American wage, President Trump drove a hard bargain that we think takes the incentive to move jobs out of Michigan and south of the border away almost entirely. And I think you saw Ford this week announce investments in 2 plants that will create 3,000 more jobs. We've seen $1 trillion in capital come back to the United States of America by corporations. The economy's created more than 7 million new jobs, including more than 500,000 manufacturing jobs. And we really believe the USMCA addresses the issues that were driving manufacturing south of the border and offshore. And make no mistake about it, Rick, the USMCA is also a big win for agriculture here in Michigan and across America. Whether it be dairy or other forms of agriculture, the USMCA puts American workers and American farmers first.
Quickly, the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative was taken out of the budget by the administration on a couple of occasions, but when the president was here in March, he said he would put it back in. An additional $20 million has been added to that. Do you and the president and the administration support that initiative, and do you think that is something that will continually be funded?
Well, the Great Lakes is such a national treasure, and making sure that the Great Lakes remain a healthy habitat, something that people can enjoy in the midst of vibrant commerce moving through the region, is a priority for this administration. And the president announced support for the Great Lakes Initiative when he was here in Michigan, and we were very pleased to see an increase in funding off of prior levels. And the people of Michigan can be confident that this administration is going to stand for the Great Lakes, the strength and prosperity and health of this entire region.
It is no secret that Democrats and Republicans see Michigan as a battleground state. Michigan GOP Chair Laura Cox talked about how important it will be. We're still more than 300 days away from the election, but Michigan already feels like ground zero. This has really been an active period. As the party chairman talked to me about how important it is to try to do a repeat, and then how important it is to have the principals in the state as often as we have seen them in the past 2 weeks.
Well, Michigan is a battleground state, like you pointed out, and we want to expand on that victory from 2016. The president recognizes how important Michigan is, how important Michigan voters are, and he wants to directly talk to the voters and deliver his message. And the best way to do that is to visit and visit often, and have surrogates as well. So we've had the president and the vice president visit the state numerous times in 2019, and we're looking forward to a very, very busy 2020 as well.
It's really interesting when you look at the map from 2016, because in Wayne County, for example, there was a deficit of something just under 300,000 votes. But as you get out to a Calhoun County, he won by 7,000 votes in a county that twice helped elect President Obama. Mm-hmm. So that is a big sea change, made a big difference in the outcome for the state of Michigan, first time in 28 years for Republicans. But in order to recreate that, you have to put together that same coalition again. And I would suspect you're going to have to raise those vote totals in some of those out counties, because the Democratic Party is going to be well organized and obviously going to pursue Michigan very, very on a very tough basis.
Right, and The president didn't neglect Michigan in 2016. He recognized how important Michigan was. He recognizes that he resonates in Michigan. You know, our manufacturing sector is booming under his leadership. Our economy is doing well. And he wants to talk directly to the voters and explain to them why they need to get to the polls and re-elect him. And I think if people look at their pocketbooks, if people look at their investments, if people look at the unemployment is at record lows. You know, I was looking in Grand Rapids, in the Grand Rapids area, unemployment when the president took over office was at 4%. Last month it was at 2.5%. This is unbelievable, historic economy boom in Michigan, in across the country, and he wants to talk directly to voters to talk about his policies and his vision for the next 4 years.
So that brings up this question. If you're running for state house, maybe even state senate, you can knock on most of the doors in your district. If you're running for the U.S. House, it's almost impossible to do the same thing. The President of the United States can come in and talk to thousands of people all at once, but it's hard to talk to everybody in Michigan. So he's got to do more than just rallies, right?
Right, absolutely. And you know what? He has a great campaign plan, and in Michigan, we are 8 months ahead of schedule for a presidential election cycle. We have folks on the ground across the state earlier than we've ever had. You know, we're going to have the number of folks in 2019 in the field in Michigan is more than was in total in 2016. We're taking it serious, the president's taking it serious, and we're getting out there and we're training volunteers, we're talking to voters, we're identifying what made them go to the polls in 16 and support our president and Republicans, and we're getting them back to the polls in 2020. That's our job number one.
How much will it matter that Democrats will be motivated? They aren't going to ignore Michigan in 2020. It seems impossible to believe that they would. So how much more does that put on you as party chairman and even on the ticket?
Well, I think that it's really important that people understand that, you know, we take our opponents seriously, and, you know, the president's going to talk about the differences in policies, whoever his opponent is, and we're going to let him do that, and it's going to be pretty easy, I think, if you look at most of the candidates or the front runners. But we're basically staying focused. We have a plan. You know, we're laying the groundwork, we're laying the infrastructure, and we're building on that. And we're building early, and we're investing in Michigan, and we are excited. We're rolling up our sleeves, and grassroots activists are excited that we're a battleground state. We're excited that we're important, and that, you know, means you have a lot more activity in the state, which of course gets everybody excited to get people to volunteer for state rep candidates as well as, you know, Republicans up and down the ballot.
Up next, a different view of a form of government that works in a different way from Washington. We'll talk with Governor Gretchen Whitmer about her first year in office and what she has planned for 2020. Next, To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. Governor Gretchen Whitmer had a busy first year as governor in Lansing. With a Republican legislature, the budgeting process was difficult, to be generous, and sometimes communications between the executive and legislative seemed strained. But listen for a couple of takeaways in this interview. One, how she and the Republican leaders really get along, and how she telegraphs, at least partially, that a new road plan may be on the horizon.
Well, Governor, that was quite a year. After a really long election cycle, big success for Democrats, and you move in to the governor's office and things start right away. You start talking about budgeting. Give me your impression of your first 12 months.
I think the first year of any administration, you're drinking from a fire hose, right? Trying to get your arms around everything you've inherited, run a state government that's 48,000 state employees, that touches people's lives in the most intimate ways, and trying to deliver on all the things that you ran on, right? So I impaneled a phenomenal cabinet, came out of the box with a lot of executive orders and directives about who we are in Michigan, pay equity, LGBTQ protections in state government, reorganizing so that we're focused on water and environmental justice, reorganizing so that we've got labor and economic opportunity, and we harness all of the efforts to close the skills gap in Michigan into one department. We've announced more jobs in the mobility sector than any governor in 30 years in Michigan. Wrote a budget that actually delivered on fixing the damn roads, but ran up a course against the legislature that didn't warmly embrace it, to put it lightly. But you know, I am feeling very grateful to be here. I am proud of a lot of the accomplishments that we've done, and I am determined to make sure that on all of the things that we haven't been able to check off yet, that we're successful doing that going forward.
You came into this office with, my words, not yours, a significant advantage because of your experience in the legislature. I watched you work in a number of different scenarios, including on Mackinac Island with Senator Shirkey, with Speaker Chatfield. And despite the fact that there have been some impasses, I still get the sense that you, the three of you, along with the Democratic leaders to be sure, still have a pretty good working relationship. Is that window dressing or is that real?
No, I think it's real. I think it's real. The toxicity in Washington, D.C. has certainly created some challenges here in Michigan as well, right? The Senate Majority Leader was caught using some really pretty ugly, colorful language about me. You know what? I'm not going to return fire with fire. I've held these quadrant meetings every other week because I think it's important that we have an open dialogue. I sent him a birthday cake after that, you know, making light of it, because I'm not going to take this personally. I've got a job to do. The people of our state are counting on us to find our common ground wherever we can. And if it's not around closing the skills gap and cleaning up water in Michigan and fixing the dam roads, then where is it? And that's why I'm staying focused on those things that I know matter to everyone in this state. I'm not going to take anything personally, and I'm going to continue to put my foot on the gas to get these problems solved.
One of the things that we believe is that because of some of the changes made after the budget was delivered, that you may see the next budget, hopefully one that you all can negotiate a little bit, but that can be done by July, which that would be a step forward, particularly for schools whose fiscal year starts then.
A major step forward. I've always thought that it's important to get the budgets done before the legislature takes a summer break. You heard me say that often this past summer when the work wasn't done and people weren't around Lansing. The fact of the matter is, you know, in these final round of negotiations, we all agreed that budgets are going to get to my desk by July 1st. It'll be a vast improvement for schools, and it's something that I think we had to write into law because even though it happened the last 8 years, when one party controls everything, it's a lot easier to make sure that that gets done. We want to make sure that no matter who's in the governor's office or who controls the legislature, that the people of Michigan remain the top priority and that those budgets are done early enough that our educators can build their budgets around them.
I think that the way that your message during your campaign resonated about roads is something that I see others who may be running for office continue to talk about. But the reality is that you own that along with the legislature, and moving forward, you're going to have to find some revenue somewhere. Are we any closer to knowing where?
Well, I did what I said I was going to do. I came out of the box with a budget that actually fixed the problem. I said, we're going to fix the dam roads. The roads are a $2.5 billion problem annually. We're closing a bridge every other week in Michigan right now. They're getting more and more dangerous, and it's more and more expensive for everyone who drives because we're paying to fix our cars, whether it's an alignment or it's a new tire or it's a new windshield. We're all paying for bad roads, but it's also loss of opportunity. To draw investment into Michigan and to maintain our pole position and mobility, we have to have roads of the future for the cars that we want to be designing, building, and manufacturing here in Michigan. And so when the roads erupt in the spring, because they will, this will be the worst pothole season we've ever seen in Michigan. It's going to be because the legislature never got serious about any sort of an alternative to what I put on the table. They didn't embrace the gas tax. I wasn't surprised, but I am disappointed because everyone in our state needs us to fix this. And I think it was their job to come up with a viable alternative if they didn't like the solution I put on the table. They didn't. They said, you know, steal teacher pensions or sell some bridges or let the roads turn to gravel. None of those is acceptable. And that's why I'm undeterred. I'm going to move forward into next year and make sure that we make some progress on this.
Well, if the 45-cent per gallon gas tax wasn't acceptable to the legislature, and I might suggest that I think some of your own Democratic members were not too wild about the idea, and I know you've said you don't want to negotiate with yourself, and I appreciate that, but is there a second bite of the apple? Do you come back with something else, or do you just stay with that?
You're going to have to stay tuned, Rick. I mean, this is, I think, a great frustration for everyone in this state. And people are going to be really mad when March and April come and the freeze and thaw happens. The fact of the matter is, though, I am undeterred. I'm not going to let a legislature that's not serious stand in our way of making progress. And so we will be moving forward, and you'll learn more about what that looks like at the early part of next year.
If you go through the next 12 months without being able to move this legislature to do something on roads, what is that going to say about that messaging? Because, I mean, look, that caught on in a big way. Is it more important now that you get something done on roads than it was in your first year?
All I can say is I wouldn't want to be a candidate for the legislature who didn't support or come up with an alternative on a roads plan. I've suggested, unless you want to run on a dirt roads platform, anyone on the ballot next year better be able to say what they support or what they don't support. And if it's doing nothing, then people are going to know. This last election was decided around pragmatic solutions to issues that everyone's concerned about, not about hyper-partisan issues, but really about the fundamentals. And so I would suggest anyone who's running for the legislature, whether it's re-election or for the first time, better have a thoughtful plan on what they would support on roads, because doing nothing is not an option.
I get a lot of emails. Most of them are about roads. Some about some ancillary issues, but one of the themes that keeps popping up in my inbox is pension tax. And they're like, what's the governor going to do about the pension tax? Is there any plan, is there any thought, is there any desire to modify that?
I said absolutely. I did not support the pension tax when Governor Snyder and the Republicans in the legislature pushed it through. I said I'd like to repeal it, and I even wrote a repeal of it in my budget that I introduced last year. People focus on the 45-cent gas tax as though that was the only thing in that budget. But when we pay for roads the right way, it gives us the ability to make other choices in our budget, to elevate, the priority of funding our schools, to make college more affordable, to clean up drinking water, and to pay for things like a pension tax repeal. But short of coming up with a solution to how to pay for it, it's impossible to do because it's got a huge price tag. This is about priorities. If you didn't support the 45-cent gas tax, then you didn't also support an opportunity to repeal pensions. That's what I was trying to get done.
60 seconds left. Give me your impressions of your first year.
It's been exhilarating. I am inspired by the people of our state and by what's happening. We made incredible bipartisan ground on auto no-fault reform. Consumers are going to feel that going into next year. We've announced more jobs and investment in the mobility sector than any governor in 30 years. We've recreated government to focus on things like environmental justice. And I've made incredible appointments, whether it's on the bench or it's on the Potato Commission. We have real representation at seats of power across Michigan, just by virtue of that ability, and I'm very proud of the work that we've done, but I am more determined than ever to make sure that we continue to be successful on these fundamentals.
So what of the new year in Lansing? There will be several priorities that may be dealt with early on. First, major line items that have not been restored when it comes to funding. Pure Michigan comes to mind. Whether the governor and legislature can come to an accord on that and other spending remains to be seen. Roads will always be looming. We may see a new plan from the governor, and of course, more questions about how to pay for whatever it is. One more thing. Lawmakers and the governor have to soon start on a new budget that has to be on the governor's desk in 6 months and 10 days. We're back with the final thought about impeachment. Next, To the Point. As the holidays are upon us, we may hear slightly less about impeachment, at least for a while, but it will be front and center in January when there may or may not be a trial. There may or may not be rule changes in the Senate, and there will without doubt be the unwavering viewpoint on both sides of the issue that the other side is wrong. The process is important and worth watching no matter which side you choose, no matter what the outcome. Also worth watching is how it impacts the ability of the President and Congress to take action on any important legislation. We'll try to make sense of it in the new year right here, To the Point.